The grand ballroom of the Grand Horizon Hotel was a sea of glittering tuxedos, sparkling champagne flutes, and flashbulbs that looked like miniature stars exploding in the dark. Lysander stood on the center stage, a triumphant, arrogant smile plastered across his face. This was the moment he had sacrificed everything for. In just a few seconds, the elusive tech billionaire, Theron Vance, was going to sign a $10 million investment contract that would elevate Lysander's startup into a global empire. And now, to officially welcome our new partner, the announcer beamed into the microphone. The founder and CEO of Vance Industries. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause as the heavy velvet curtains parted. Lysander stepped forward, his hand extended, his heart hammering with absolute greed. But as the figure walked into the brilliant spotlight, Lysander's smile instantly froze. His hand began to shake violently, and the blood drained completely from his face. Walking toward him in a flawless, custom-tailored white tuxedo was Caspian. It was his embarrassing older brother. The same brother Lysander had banned from his luxury engagement party just a week ago. The same brother he had called a low-class, grease-stained mechanic who would ruin his reputation in front of high society. Caspian didn't reach out to shake Lysander's hand. Instead, he took the microphone, his eyes locking onto his younger brother with a cold, devastating clarity. The entire ballroom fell into a dead, suffocating silence. A week ago, Lysander, you told me that a man who cleans grease for a living didn't deserve to breathe the same air as billionaires. Caspian's voice resonated through the massive speakers, echoing with absolute authority. You told me I was a stain on your perfect life. So tell me, what happens to your perfect life when the man you threw out owns the very stage you are standing on? Lysander felt his knees buckle. The cameras flashed aggressively, capturing the exact second his carefully constructed world turned into dust. Welcome back to Moments and Meanings. Have you ever cut off a branch of your own family tree just because it didn't look as shiny or successful as the rest? We live in a world obsessed with outward appearances, where people would rather stand next to a wealthy stranger than a humble brother who actually loves them. But the universe has a funny way of teaching us that the people we think are beneath us are often the ones holding the keys to our entire future. Let's dive into a powerful story about pride, betrayal, and a shocking twist of karma that proves family isn't something you can just cancel when it becomes inconvenient. The penthouse apartment was filled with the sharp, clinical scent of expensive eucalyptus and the aggressive rustle of glossy invitations. Lysander stood in front of his floor-to-ceiling mirror, adjusting the silk bow tie of his tuxedo. Everything about his life had to be perfect. His hair was slicked back with high-end pomade, his shoes were polished to a mirror-like shine, and his arm was draped around Rosalind, his wealthy high-society fiancée. Rosalind was the daughter of a real estate tycoon, a woman who measured a person's worth entirely by the brand of their watch and the zip code of their primary residence. Together they were planning the social event of the season, an ultra-exclusive, black-tie engagement gala at the Grand Horizon Hotel. We have to be absolutely ruthless with the guest list, darling, Rosalind said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness as she swiped through a tablet. The board members of Vance Industries are attending. If we want them to invest $10 million into your tech startup, every single person in that room must exude luxury, power, and status. I know, Rosalind, Lysander replied, his heart beating with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. This investment is everything. The CEO, Theron Vance, is notoriously private, but his representatives said he loves investing in family-oriented, grounded entrepreneurs. I just need to show him that I belong in his world. Before Rosalind could answer, the sleek, minimalist video intercom on the wall chimed loudly. Lysander pressed the button and his stomach instantly dropped. Standing in the lobby downstairs, visible through the high-definition camera, was his older brother Caspian. Caspian looked completely out of place in the pristine marble lobby. He was wearing his usual work attire, a pair of faded blue denim overalls, a heavy flannel shirt with frayed cuffs, and heavy work boots that left faint dust prints on the polished floor. His hands were rough and calloused, with dark lines of motor oil permanently embedded under his fingernails. For the past 10 years, Caspian had run a small, dusty auto repair garage on the edge of town, working 12-hour days fixing rusty sedans and broken-down trucks. Rosalind peeked over Lysander's shoulder at the screen and let out a dramatic, horrified gasp. "Oh goodness, Lysander. Is that him?" Please tell me he isn't coming up here. He smells like a gasoline fire through the camera. I'll handle it, Lysander muttered, a hot wave of embarrassment flushing through his chest. He buzzed his brother up, praying that none of his wealthy neighbors would see Caspian in the elevator. A moment later, the penthouse door opened. Caspian stepped inside, carrying a small brown paper bag tied with a piece of rough twine. Despite his tired eyes and the smudge of grease on his jawline, his face split into a wide, genuinely warm smile the moment he saw his younger brother. "Hey, little bro," Caspian said, his deep voice filled with pride. He stepped forward to wrap Lysander in a tight hug, but Lysander stiffened, subtly pulling away to prevent the grease on Caspian's clothes from touching his designer suit. Caspian noticed the rejection, his smile faltering for just a fraction of a second, but his warmth quickly returned. He nodded politely toward Rosalind. "Hello, Rosalind. You look beautiful." Rosalind offered a cold, tight-lipped nod, crossing her arms and stepping back a few feet, as if Caspian's poverty was an airborne disease. "What are you doing here, Caspian?" Lysander asked, his voice tight and impatient. "We're in the middle of finalizing the guest list for the engagement gala. It's a very busy day." I know, Caspian said softly, rubbing the back of his neck with a calloused hand. "I didn't mean to interrupt. I wanted to drop off your wedding gift early. I knew things would be chaotic, closer to the date, and I wanted to make sure you had this before the big party." Caspian carefully placed the brown paper bag on the pristine white quartz kitchen island. Rosalind stared at the bag as if it were a ticking bomb. "A brown paper bag? How? Rustic." Lysander sighed, walking over and untying the twine. He reached into the bag and pulled out a small, heavy object wrapped in a faded piece of green cloth. When he unwrapped it, his face twisted into deep disappointment. Sitting in his palm was an old, unbranded pocket watch. The silver-plated casing was scratched, the glass face was cloudy, and it looked completely ancient. It didn't have a designer logo. It didn't shine, and it looked like something you would buy at a yard sale for $5. "A pocket watch?" Lysander said, his tone dripping with irritation. "Caspian, I wear an Audemars Piguet. Why would I ever wear an unbranded, scratched piece of junk like this?" Caspian's eyes softened, a deep, emotional history pooling in them. He stepped closer, pointing gently to the watch. "It's not junk, Lysander. Do you remember our father's old garage? Before he passed away, he told me that a man's worth isn't measured by how much money he makes, but by the time he gives to the people he loves. I spent the last 6 months restoring this watch by hand in my spare time. I completely rebuilt the internal gears. It might look old on the outside, Lysander, but the mechanism inside is flawless. I engraved a message on the back for you." Lysander flipped the watch over. In tiny, slightly uneven hand-engraved letters, the back read, "Time passes, but brotherhood is eternal." Rosalind let out a sharp, mocking laugh from the living room. "Oh, that's just precious. A handmade poem. Lysander, we can use it as a paperweight for the tax documents." Lysander felt a toxic mixture of pride and superficial anger bubble up inside him. He looked at his brother's grease-stained clothes, thought about the high society billionaires who would be at the gala, and looked down at the cheap-looking pocket watch. To his blinded mind, Caspian wasn't a loving brother giving a priceless piece of his soul. He was a walking liability. A low-class mechanic who would embarrass him in front of the people holding the keys to his fortune. "Thanks, Caspian," Lysander said coldly, tossing the watch carelessly onto the counter where it landed with a sharp metallic clatter. "But honestly, you shouldn't have bothered. In the world I'm building, appearances matter. And right now, this just doesn't fit." Caspian stared at the watch lying on the counter, then looked up at his younger brother. The quiet dignity in Caspian's eyes didn't waver, but a deep, tragic sadness settled over his face. He finally understood that Lysander no longer saw him as a brother. He only saw him as an embarrassment. 3 days had passed since Caspian's visit, and the pressure on Lysander had reached a boiling point. The luxury engagement gala at the Grand Horizon Hotel was only 48 hours away. Lysander's tech startup was on the verge of bankruptcy, and the $10 million investment from Vance Industries was his only salvation. He needed everything to be flawless. To celebrate the impending deal, Rosalind had organized an intimate pre-gala cocktail party at their penthouse. The living room was filled with the city's young elite, including Rosalind's closest childhood friend, Sterling, a ruthless venture capitalist who wore tailored suits and treated everyone beneath his tax bracket like background noise. Lysander walked through the crowd, laughing at jokes he didn't find funny and sipping champagne he couldn't afford. He was doing everything right, playing the part of a successful high-society entrepreneur. "I heard a rumor." "Lysander," Sterling said, swirling his whiskey glass as he leaned against the quartz kitchen island. "Rosalind mentioned that you have an older brother, an auto mechanic. I assume he'll be sitting at the VIP table with the Vance Industries board members at the gala." The entire conversation in the immediate area ceased. Several wealthy guests turned to look at Lysander, their expressions a mix of curiosity and subtle judgment. Rosalind narrowed her eyes, shooting Lysander a sharp, warning glare. Lysander felt a cold bead of sweat roll down his spine. "Oh, Caspian? Well, he's very passionate about his work. But he's mostly private. He doesn't really care for high society events." "Good," Sterling sneered, letting out a condescending chuckle. "Because Theron Vance is a man of extreme elegance. If he sees a guy with grease under his fingernails trying to pitch him a tech platform, he'll laugh you out of the room. In business, Lysander, your family defines your pedigree. A low-class relative is like a virus to a luxury brand. You have to quarantine it." Before Lysander could respond, the elevator chimes rang through the penthouse. The doors slid open, and the room fell into an awkward, suffocating silence. Standing in the entryway was Caspian. He had tried his best. He wasn't wearing his work overalls this time. Instead, he wore an old, slightly faded black suit that had belonged to their late father. The shoulders were a bit too broad, the fabric was stiff and outdated, and his shoes, though wiped down, were visibly worn at the soles. He was holding a small cardboard box. "Lysander," Caspian said softly, stepping into the room. He looked around at the sea of diamonds, tuxedos, and judgmental stares, instantly realizing he had walked into a party. "I'm sorry to drop by unannounced. I know you're busy. But I realized I forgot to give you the RSVP card for the gala. And I brought our father's old silver cufflinks. I thought you'd want to wear them with your tuxedo." Sterling openly smirked, nudging Rosalind with his elbow. Rosalind walked over to Lysander, her voice a harsh, venomous whisper directly into his ear. "Get him out of here right now, Lysander. He looks like a waiter from a cheap diner. If he shows up at the Grand Horizon Hotel in 48 hours, the engagement is off, and I will personally tell Theron Vance's representatives that your family is a joke. Make your choice." Lysander looked at his fiancée. He looked at Sterling and the whispering elites. Then, he looked at his brother, the man who had skipped meals when they were younger just so Lysander could afford textbooks for his computer science degree. But greed is a powerful blinding agent. Lysander didn't see a brother who had sacrificed everything for him. He saw a threat to his $10 million dream. He saw an embarrassment. Lysander walked over to Caspian, his face hardening into a mask of pure cruelty. "What are you doing here, Caspian?" Lysander said, his voice loud enough for the entire room to hear. "I thought I made myself clear the other day. You don't belong here." Caspian blinked, his heart breaking in real time. "Lysander, I'm your brother. I just wanted to bring you Dad's cufflinks. I've been looking forward to your engagement party for months. Well, you can stop looking forward to it." Lysander snapped, stepping closer, his voice dripping with venom to impress his wealthy audience. "Look at you. You show up here in a dead man's oversized suit, smelling like an engine block, embarrassing me in front of my investors. You want to talk about family? You're a liability." Caspian swallowed hard, his voice trembling. "A liability? Lysander, I raised you after Mom and Dad died. I worked 16-hour days at that garage so you could have a future. And I paid you back by becoming successful." Lysander shouted, entirely consumed by his own ego. "But your journey ends here, Caspian. I am entering the billionaire class. I am standing next to people who run the world. And I cannot have a low-class, grease-stained mechanic dragging me back down to the mud." Lysander reached over to the kitchen counter. Resting there, exactly where he had left it 3 days ago, was the hand-restored pocket watch Caspian had built for him. Lysander picked it up. "You want me to have this piece of junk?" Lysander hissed. "You want me to care about brotherhood?" With a sudden violent movement, Lysander marched over to the stainless steel trash can at the end of the counter. In front of Rosalind, Sterling, and 30 whispering guests, Lysander dropped the priceless, hand-engraved pocket watch into the garbage. It hit the metal bottom with a loud, hollow, devastating thud. "You are officially uninvited from the gala, Caspian," Lysander said coldly, pointing a trembling finger toward the elevator. "Do not show your face at the Grand Horizon Hotel. Do not call me. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have a brother. Now get out." The penthouse was dead silent. Caspian stood frozen, staring at the trash can where his months of hard work and his father's memory had just been discarded like waste. He looked at Lysander, but he didn't see his little brother anymore. He saw a stranger entirely possessed by arrogance. Caspian didn't yell. He didn't cry. He simply set the cardboard box with their father's cufflinks gently on a side table. He straightened the shoulders of his father's old suit, turned around and walked back into the elevator. As the doors slid shut, separating the two brothers, Lysander felt a strange, momentary chill in his chest. "Well done, darling," Rosalind said, walking up and wrapping her arms around his neck, planting a kiss on his cheek. "You finally proved you have the stomach for greatness." The guests cheered, raising their champagne flutes to toast Lysander's cold heart. Lysander forced a smile, convinced he had just secured his future. He had no idea he had just signed the death warrant for his own soul, and that the countdown to his absolute destruction had officially begun. The 48 hours following Caspian's banishment were not a triumphant countdown to glory for Lysander. They were a descent into absolute architectural chaos. Behind the heavy minimalist doors of his luxury penthouse, the glittering facade of Lysander's life was violently cracking. It turned out that building a tech startup entirely on hype, expensive cocktail parties, and superficial networking left the actual core of the business completely hollow. On the morning before the grand gala, the unthinkable happened. The main servers hosting Lysander's proprietary software suffered a catastrophic, cascading system failure. Lysander sat in his home office, his designer tuxedo shirt unbuttoned, his expensive pomaded hair wild and disheveled. He stared at the glowing red error screens flashing across his monitors. "Fix it," Rosalind screamed, pacing behind him while holding a glass of iced white wine. She wasn't offering comfort, her voice was sharp with venomous anxiety. "The Vance Industries technical audit team is running their final independent background check on your platform right now. If they see a system crash, they will pull the $10 million investment before the gala even starts. Do you have any idea what that will do to my family's reputation?" "I'm trying, Rosalind," Lysander yelled back, his fingers flying across the keyboard, his face drenched in cold sweat. "The core algorithm has a structural logic loop. I don't know how to bypass the hardware firewall without corrupting the data. I don't fully understand the mechanical routing of the server stacks. I hired outside contractors to build it, and they aren't answering their phones." In that moment of absolute panic, a sudden, agonizing memory flashed through Lysander's mind. He remembered his brother Caspian. He remembered how Caspian could look at a completely ruined, smoking car engine, listen to the erratic sound of the metal, and instantly know which tiny valve was misaligned. Caspian didn't just fix cars. He possessed a rare, brilliant understanding of structural mechanics and internal logic. When they were teenagers, Caspian had actually helped Lysander build his very first computer server, hand-wiring the circuit boards in their father's dusty garage. If Caspian were here, he would know exactly how to fix the routing structure. Lysander thought, a sickening knot of regret twisting in his stomach. But Lysander had thrown his brother's brilliant mind into a trash can, along with his father's pocket watch. There was no turning back. By the evening of the Grand Horizon Hotel Gala, Lysander had managed to apply a temporary, highly unstable digital patch to his software. It was a digital house of cards, barely holding together. If anyone at Vance Industries pressed the platform too hard during the live demonstration on stage, his entire company would implode on national television. Lysander arrived at the hotel looking pristine on the outside, but he was completely decaying from the inside out. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. He knew that tonight was his absolute last lifeline. He was drowning in debt from maintaining his fake billionaire lifestyle, and if Theron Vance didn't sign that contract, Lysander would face total financial ruin and public humiliation. Rosalind walked beside him, her hand gripping his arm with a vice-like intensity. She wore a diamond necklace that cost more than a suburban home, her eyes scanning the grand lobby for reporters. "Smile, Lysander," she hissed through a perfectly painted, artificial grin. "The cameras are watching. Look like a winner." As they neared the grand ballroom entrance, a sudden commotion erupted near the hotel's private VIP valet pavilion. The heavy glass doors of the lobby were violently pushed open by hotel security. The Grand Horizons general manager, a man who usually ignored millionaires, was personally sprinting down the steps, adjusting his jacket, his face pale with immense reverence. "Clear the corridor." The lead security guard barked into his lapel microphone. "The executive motorcade has just arrived. Make way." Lysander and Rosalind were aggressively pushed to the side of the velvet-lined hallway, forced to stand among the onlookers. Lysander watched, his breath catching in his throat. He assumed this was Theron Vance, the elusive tech titan who held his entire destiny in his hands. Through the massive glass windows, Lysander saw a fleet of 6 identical armored black luxury SUVs pull up to the curb, their sirens pulsing with quiet authority. In the center of the motorcade was a vehicle that made the surrounding sports cars look like cheap toys, a pristine, custom-built, pearl-white Maybach. A team of security guards in sharp, identical black suits formed an impenetrable human wall from the car door to the lobby entrance. The rear door of the Maybach was opened by the hotel manager himself, who bowed deeply. A man stepped out of the vehicle. Lysander's vision blurred. The entire lobby seemed to tilt on its axis. He gripped the gold-plated stanchion next to him so hard his knuckles turned white. Walking through the double doors, flanked by top-tier corporate executives and attorneys, was Caspian. The reversal was so absolute, so violently cinematic, that Lysander forgot how to breathe. Caspian was no longer wearing his father's oversized, outdated suit. He was dressed in a flawless, bespoke, custom-tailored white tuxedo that radiated an unimaginable level of wealth and undisputed power. His hair was perfectly styled, his posture was commanding, and his jawline was set with the unshakable confidence of a man who ruled an empire. As Caspian walked down the center of the cleared corridor, the very same high society elites who had whispered and mocked him at the penthouse just 2 days ago now bowed their heads in deep respect. Sterling, Rosalind's arrogant venture capitalist friend, was standing nearby, frantically trying to catch Caspian's eye, his face filled with desperate, groveling desperation. Caspian marched straight past the crowd. He walked with a steady, powerful stride, his eyes fixed forward. He passed within 3 feet of Lysander. Lysander reached out a trembling hand, his voice cracking. Caspian? Caspian didn't stop. He didn't turn his head. He didn't give Lysander even a microsecond of acknowledgement. To Caspian, the younger brother who had brutally disowned him in front of a room full of strangers, simply did not exist. He swept past Lysander like a ghost, entering the private VIP elevators that led directly to the main stage of the grand ballroom. Lysander stood frozen in the shadow of his brother's immense, blinding light. He looked down at his own expensive suit, suddenly feeling entirely small, fraudulent, and exposed. The roles had completely flipped. Lysander was no longer the successful entrepreneur looking down on a mechanic. He was a desperate, broke beggar hiding a failing company, standing in the presence of a true king. And as the heavy velvet curtains of the ballroom began to open, Lysander realized he was walking straight into a trap of his own making. The air in the grand ballroom turned to absolute ice. The murmurs of the city's elite grew into a deafening roar of disbelief as Caspian stepped fully into the spotlight on the main stage. Lysander stood frozen, his hands still extended in mid-air, trembling so violently that his heavy gold ring rattled against his skin. His breath came in short, shallow gasps. He looked at the flawless white tuxedo, the razor-sharp posture, and the undeniable aura of absolute authority radiating from the man he had called a grease-stained loser just 48 hours ago. Behind the stage, in the front row of the VIP section, Rosalind's face transformed into a mask of pure terror. The champagne flute she was holding slipped from her manicured fingers, shattering against the marble floor, splashing expensive liquid across her designer gown. Sterling, who had spent the last hour bragging about his connections, choked on his drink, his eyes bulging out of his head. Caspian did not look at the crowd. He kept his piercing, calm gaze fixed entirely on his younger brother. He stepped up to the crystal podium, adjusting the microphone with a slow, deliberate movement of his calloused, clean hands. "I see a lot of confused faces in this room tonight," Caspian began, his deep baritone voice echoing flawlessly through the state-of-the-art sound system. For the past 7 years, the tech world has wondered about the identity of the elusive founder and CEO of Vance Industries. The media spun stories of a mysterious reclusive billionaire who refused to attend galas, who preferred to let his global infrastructure software speak for itself. Caspian paused, letting his words hang heavy in the suffocating silence. "The truth is simple. I never cared for the flashing lights of high society. My name is Caspian Theron Vance. Theron was our late father's first name, and Vancey was our mother's maiden name. When I built this multi-billion-dollar enterprise from a laptop in a dusty corner of my auto garage, I used their names to honor them. I kept running that small repair shop because fixing broken things with my hands kept me grounded. It reminded me of where I came from. And more importantly, it allowed me to see who people truly are when they think I have nothing to offer them." A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. Lysander felt his heart drop straight into his stomach. The realization hit him like a physical blow to the chest. Caspian wasn't a poor mechanic trying to cling to his successful brother. Caspian was the kingdom. He was the sun that Lysander's entire universe revolved around. "Caspian," Lysander choked out, his voice cracking pitifully as he took a desperate step forward on the stage. He dropped his hand, his face drenched in cold sweat. "Caspian, please. I didn't know. You have to understand. The pressure of the startup, the investors. I was stressed. I didn't mean any of the things I said at the penthouse. I love you, man. We're blood. We're brothers." Caspian looked at Lysander, a profound, unshakable sadness in his eyes. There was no anger on his face, only the cold, devastating finality of a bridge that had been permanently burned. "Brothers?" Caspian asked softly into the microphone. "2 days ago, Lysander, you told me that family was a liability. You told me that a man who cleans grease for a living didn't deserve to breathe the same air as your wealthy friends. You told me you didn't have a brother." Caspian reached into the inner breast pocket of his pristine white tuxedo jacket. He pulled out a small, transparent evidence bag. Inside the bag sat the old, silver-plated pocket watch. It was covered in dark, filthy liquid, its glass face cracked, and its casing scratched from where it had slammed against the bottom of a luxury penthouse trash can. "You looked at this watch, and you called it a piece of junk," Caspian said, holding the bag up so the high-definition cameras could project it onto the massive stadium-sized screens above the stage. "Your superficial mind was so blinded by brand names and price tags that you never even bothered to look beneath the surface." Caspian turned the watch over, pointing to the hand-engraved gears visible through the display back. "I spent 6 months hand-machining the internal micro-gears of this specific watch. What I never told you, Lysander, is that the mechanical routing inside this timepiece is the physical hardware key to a secure, decentralized quantum server. It is the master encryption key to the founding shares of Vance Industries." Lysander's eyes went wide. His jaw dropped in absolute, paralyzing horror. Inside the core casing of this junk watch, Caspian delivered the final, crushing blow, is a cold storage microdrive containing exactly 51% of my company's total stock. This watch wasn't just a sentimental poem, Lysander. It was my wedding gift to you. I came to your penthouse to hand over half of a multi-billion-dollar empire to my little brother. Because I wanted to make sure you were set for life. A wave of loud, chaotic murmurs exploded through the audience. Lysander let out a guttural, agonizing sob, his hands flying to his head. He had literally thrown $25 billion into a garbage can because he was ashamed of the container it came in. He had held his ultimate fortune in his own hands, and he had discarded it like worthless waste, just to impress a room full of frauds. "Caspian, I'm sorry." Lysander screamed, completely abandoning whatever dignity he had left as he fell to his knees on the stage. He crawled toward his brother, tears streaming down his face, ruining his expensive makeup and staining his designer trousers. "Please, don't do this to me. My startup is failing. The servers are crashing right now. If Vance Industries doesn't sign the $10 million investment contract tonight, I am completely ruined. I'll lose everything. Please, Caspian, save me." He reached out to grab the hem of Caspian's trousers, weeping like a child. But Caspian simply took a step back, out of his younger brother's desperate reach. "I can't sign that contract, Lysander," Caspian said, his voice dropping into a tone of absolute, chilling authority. "Because an hour ago, my technical audit team reviewed your platform. They found your cheap digital patches. They found the fraudulent data loops. But more importantly, I don't invest in people who only value the finish line while despising the marathon. The deal is officially dead. Security. Remove him from the stage." The two towering hotel security guards didn't hesitate. They stepped forward, their massive frames casting long, suffocating shadows over Lysander as he groveled on the polished stage. Without a single word, they gripped him by the arms of his expensive, custom-tailored tuxedo and lifted him effortlessly to his feet, treating the supposed tech prodigy like a trespassing vagrant. "Caspian, please, you can't do this," Lysander shrieked, his voice cracking with a high-pitched, pathetic desperation that echoed through the state-of-the-art stadium speakers. He thrashed violently against the guard's iron grip, his polished dress shoes scuffing uselessly against the stage floor. "We're family. You're my brother. Look at me. You're destroying my life. My servers are crashing." Caspian stood completely still, his hands folded calmly behind his back. His expression remained a mask of profound, unshakable serenity. He didn't yell, he didn't gloat, and he didn't show a single ounce of the venom Lysander had shown him at the penthouse. He simply watched the boy he had raised turn into a hollow, broken shell of panic. "You destroyed your own life the exact moment you put a price tag on loyalty, Lysander," Caspian said softly, his deep voice carrying clearly to the very back of the silent, stunned ballroom. "Take him away." Seeing her billionaire dreams and financial life raft sinking into an abyss of total ruin, Rosalind completely lost her high society composure. She pushed violently past the stunned VIP guests, her heavy diamond necklace clinking loudly against her collarbone, and lunged toward the stage stairs. She didn't even look at Lysander as the guards dragged her fiancé past her. Instead, she threw her hands out toward Caspian, her face twisting into a manic, desperate smile. "Caspian, wait. Mr. Vance, please," Rosalind begged, her voice dripping with frantic, sycophantic greed. "You have to listen to me. I had no idea Lysander was lying to us. He's a fraud, a complete criminal. He's the one who forced me to be cruel to you. I always knew there was something deeply special and brilliant about you. Please, let's talk about the investment. My father's real estate firm would love to partner with Vance Industries. I can leave Lysander tonight." The entire ballroom erupted into loud murmurs of absolute disgust at her shameless, instant betrayal. Even Sterling, the ruthless venture capitalist, took a step away from her in sheer horror. Caspian looked down at Rosalind from the edge of the stage. The cold, piercing pity in his eyes made her freeze instantly in her tracks. "2 days ago, Rosalind, you looked at me and told me I smelled like a gasoline fire," Caspian said, every single word hitting her like a physical slap across the face. "You told my brother that a man with grease under his fingernails was a virus to a luxury brand. You didn't marry a fraud, Rosalind. You are the fraud, and your father's real estate firm will be the very first one my legal team audits in the morning." Caspian didn't wait for her response. He signaled to the auxiliary security team standing by the wings. "Remove her as well. She is trespassing on my event." "No. Get your hands off me. Do you know who my father is?" Rosalind screamed hysterically as 2 female security officers firmly grabbed her arms and escorted her away, the delicate hem of her designer gown tearing slightly as it caught against a gold stanchion. 10 minutes later, the heavy steel double doors at the back of the Grand Horizon Hotel slammed shut with a deafening, terrifying finality. Lysander and Rosalind were violently cast out into the dark, desolate delivery alley behind the industrial kitchens. To complete the poetic stroke of cosmic karma, the sky above the city broke open. A sudden, torrential downpour began to fall from the midnight sky, the freezing rain immediately washing away the last remnants of their artificial glamour. Lysander crashed heavily onto the wet, oil-stained asphalt, his designer trousers soaking through instantly. Moments later, Rosalind's $4,000 high-heeled shoe snapped on a drainage grate, and she stumbled into a murky, freezing puddle right beside him. She turned on him like a feral, cornered animal. "You worthless piece of garbage," Rosalind shrieked, violently wiping the freezing rain and running black mascara from her face. You told me you were a tech genius. You told me you were going to be a billionaire. You're completely broke. My father lent you $2 million to fund your failing servers, and now we're going to lose everything because of your monumental stupidity. Rosalind, please, I can fix this, Lysander stammered, shivering violently in the freezing rain, holding his hands up to shield his face. Don't speak to me, she yelled, her voice echoing off the brick walls of the alley. She aggressively ripped the massive, flawless diamond engagement ring off her finger and threw it violently at his chest. It bounced off his wet tuxedo shirt and splashed into a deep, filthy puddle of gutter water. The engagement is over. If I ever see your pathetic face again, I will have my father's lawyers throw you in prison for fraud. She turned and hobbled away into the dark, raging storm, screaming for her private driver, leaving Lysander entirely alone in the freezing mud. Lysander dropped to his knees, his chest heaving with agonizing sobs. He desperately clawed through the filthy, freezing puddle to find the ring, his manicured hands getting completely covered in dark, black street grease. He stopped, staring at his filthy, stained hands, the exact same grease he had despised his brother for wearing. He looked up at the towering, brilliant, warm lights of the Grand Horizon Hotel, knowing he would never, ever be allowed back inside. He had traded a brother who loved him for a world that threw him away the second his pockets were empty. Back up in the warmth and absolute luxury of the grand ballroom, the atmosphere was entirely transformed. The superficial vultures had been cleared out, and the true purpose of the evening was finally revealed. Caspian stepped down from the main stage. As the high society crowd parted for him with immense, silent reverence, a woman walked out from the private VIP lounge to join him. It was Talia. Talia didn't wear a single diamond. She didn't wear loud, gaudy designer logos to scream her status to the world. She wore a simple, breathtakingly elegant emerald green silk dress that perfectly complemented her natural, effortless beauty. Her hair was styled in soft, cascading waves, and her smile was filled with a deep, genuine warmth that money could simply never buy. For the last 7 years, while Caspian was secretly building Vance Industries in the shadows, Talia had been the lead mechanic and office manager at his small, dusty auto repair shop. She was a brilliant mechanical engineer who had graduated at the top of her university class but chose to work alongside Caspian because she believed in his vision, his mind, and his heart. On the freezing winter nights when Caspian's fingers were bleeding from hand-carving quantum micro-gears, Talia was the one who brought him hot coffee, bandaged his wounds, and kept the localized servers running. She had loved the man in the faded denim overalls long before the rest of the world ever saw him in a white tuxedo. You handled that with incredible grace, Talia whispered softly, walking up to Caspian and reaching out to gently clasp his hands. Caspian looked down at her, the cold, calculating CEO instantly vanishing, replaced by a man filled with absolute, unshakable devotion. He reached into the inner pocket of his tuxedo and handed her the transparent evidence bag containing the hand-restored, cracked silver pocket watch. I built this for a brother who chose an illusion, Caspian said quietly, his voice thick with heavy emotion. But I think it belongs to the woman who actually helped me build the reality. Talia took the heavy watch out of the bag. She didn't care that it was covered in dark residue or that the glass face was shattered. She pressed the cool metal against her heart, her eyes shining with pure, unwavering love. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, she murmured. Caspian smiled, offering her his arm. Come on. Let's go cancel the contracts with the frauds in this room, and then we'll go back to the garage. We have a real future to build. As the crowd erupted into a genuine, thunderous standing ovation, Caspian and Talia walked hand in hand out of the ballroom, leaving the glittering, superficial world behind them. They didn't need the validation of high society. They had something far more valuable. An empire built on a foundation of absolute loyalty, unquestionable truth, and a love that could never be broken by a price tag. Every moment has a meaning, but not every truth is easy to face. If this lesson resonated with you, hit the like button and subscribe. Comment loyalty below if you believe that a humble brother in a denim jacket is worth infinitely more than 100 wealthy strangers in tailored suits. This is Moments and Meanings by Anne, and I'll see you in the next story.